Thank you, Mr President. I move the motion standing in my name.
Seconded.
This, Mr President, is a really important issue for this parliament to deal with. I note that the Honourable Connie Benares advanced a motion on a similar topic, and I certainly share the concerns that she has expressed. But this motion from the Greens goes a little bit further than that, because we're not just calling for an amnesty, we're calling for the Labor government to go a step further, and that is actually rule out applying this payroll tax to GP services. Queensland has done that. They've actually provided a payroll tax ruling that clarifies that patients' fees that are paid directly to a GP for their services would not be subject to a payroll tax. Well, the patients and medical practitioners of our state don't simply need an amnesty, in effect a stay of execution, Mr President. What they need is certainty going forward, and for this money grab to be ruled out. Now, I understand that the state Labor government are in a difficult financial position. I understand that. And that's for no fault of the government. We know, of course, the significant costs that have been associated with managing COVID, not just here in our own state, but right across the country. But budgets are about choices. And this government does not have to go down the path of slugging medical practitioners and slugging, by extension, patients' increased fees. There are lots of other alternatives. Indeed, the Greens have referenced previously work of the Australia Institute that finds that there was about $150 million that is going to fossil fuel companies in subsidies, direct money from the state government. Well, that money could be being put into our health system to deal with the crisis that we are facing, Mr President. That would be an appropriate course of action, rather than a money grab that is going to cause vulnerable South Australians to be paying more to go and see a doctor. That's not something we want to see. And so the Greens certainly support the campaign of the Royal Australian College of General Practitioners for the government to stop applying payroll tax to the work of general practitioners, but indeed all healthcare professionals. And we are concerned that going to the dentist could also become more expensive here in South Australia should this medical tax get the green light from the Malinowskis government. I do want to just reference some of the work of the RACGP, that is the Royal Australian College of General Practitioners. They claim that the payroll tax for GPs would result in higher fees for patients, reductions in bulk billing, or more GPs leaving the workforce. And that, of course, would not be a good outcome for patients or the medical profession in general. And we look at that with the backdrop of the ramping crisis that is getting worse and worse and worse in this state. Now, some might say, don't trust politicians when they talk about dealing with these matters. It's all, I won't repeat the phrase of some, Mr President, but that's all, BS. Well, the reality is that people do rely on parliaments to deal with these sorts of matters. People do rely on governments to solve these sorts of matters, and they don't expect budget black holes to be plugged by the sick in our community. Out-of-pocket costs for medical services are rising, and South Australians are unable to afford basic health care. And the Greens believe, of course, that everybody is entitled to that. Last year, a Productivity Commission report showed that there was a 50% increase in Australians who delayed or avoided seeing their doctor because they could not afford it. That was up by 2.4% of people to 3.5%. At the same time, GPs are increasingly being forced to stop bulk billing to ensure that they can afford to stay afloat. That same report also revealed that there are approximately 3 million avoidable presentations to public hospital emergency departments that could have been handled by a GP. The reality is, if we don't fund GPs appropriately, if we don't invest in preventative care, you're going to see more people presenting an emergency, and we know that our hospital system is already struggling to cope. As we face both a cost of living crisis and an emergency health system at full capacity, we need to be looking at what we can do to relieve the pressure, not just compound it. In June last year, the Treasurer issued an amnesty on payroll tax to tenant GPs to the 30th of June of this year. This came after the Supreme Court of New South Wales Court of Appeal found that tenant GPs who pay a percentage of their earnings to a clinic rather than being paid a wage count as employees for payroll tax purposes. Well, the decision by the New South Wales Court caught practices by surprise, and according to the RACGP, gave them no choice but to raise patient fees. The state government amnesty was welcomed by the RACGP to give them time to work through the implications for tenant GPs. It's my understanding that this isn't just general practitioners who fall into this category. Yesterday, a dentist contacted my office and reported that dental and psychology practices are also potentially impacted by this ruling, and so the Greens call on the government to rule out applying this new tax not just to GPs, but also to medical practitioners. It's important that we consider the impact that this could have on our health system in the middle of this health crisis. Data from Hot Docs reveals that 95% of clinics are planning to increase patient fees by 12% in response to this payroll tax. That's a terrible outcome for patients who are already feeling the pinch. Research from the Pharmacy Guild of Australia has shown that 48% of patients would move to a different GP if they stopped bulk billing. Any sensible person would look at this and realise that this will end up with bulk billing facilities being overrun and being more burdened than they are at present. It will also result in patients either delaying their health care or forking out money that they can't afford to pay for the services that they need. On the 21st of February this year, the Queensland Government issued its own ruling that patients' fees paid directly to a GP for their services will not be subject to a payroll tax. The Queensland ruling applies to medical centres where medical practitioners are conducting business or providing medical services. And I note that this would capture dentistry, psychology and other medical services in addition to GPs. Well, this motion aims to put into action the calls from the RACGP for the Malinauskas government to match Queensland to exempt medical practitioners from payroll tax, both to support healthcare professionals but also to ensure patients are not being slogged for extra fees in the middle of this cost of living crisis. Now, Mr. President, this is a government that was elected on a platform of fixing our health system. Well, you can't fix our health system if you price South Australians out of getting in to see a GP. You can't fix our health system and you can't get ramping under control if you make it more difficult to get in and see a doctor, see a dentist, see a psychologist. All of these things are fundamental to our health system, and we cannot see South Australians being priced out of getting the care that they need. So I really urge the Malinauskas government not just to extend the amnesty, but to actually rule it out, knock the nail on the head and bring this matter to a close so that there is certainty for our medical professionals and certainty for vulnerable people in our community, the sick that need support of those professionals.
The Honourable Mr Martin to take the adjournment.
Move that it be further adjourned, sir.
Second to put the question. Those who question say aye. Against say no, the ayes have it. And the Honourable Mr Sims, an order of the day for...
Next Wednesday's sitting.
And that second to put the question. Those who question say aye. Against say no, the ayes have it. Blackrod.
Notice the motion, private business number 4, the Honourable R.A. Sims to move.
Call the Honourable Mr Sims.
Thank you, Mr President. I move the motion standing in my name.
Seconded.
Sims.
Thanks, Mr President. This motion congratulates the Malinauskas government on the well overdue reforms that were made to the Residential Tenancies Act in this parliament last year. Really, I do want to put on record again my appreciation to the Malinauskas government, Minister Michaels, but also the Premier with whom I worked closely on those reforms, because the government did action many of the issues that were outstanding in the